It was a sunny Thursday morning in Washington, D.C., but the air inside the White House press briefing room was anything but warm. Karoline Leavitt, the young, sharp, and quick-witted White House press secretary under President Donald Trump, stepped confidently up to the podium. Dressed in a sleek navy blue blazer and white top, she scanned the crowd of reporters, analysts, and pundits. Every seat was filled. She could feel the tension in the room. Something was up. And then she saw him. Jon Stewart, the former host of The Daily Show, long retired but recently making waves again as a political commentator with his new talk show, The Real Truth, had walked into the press briefing room, unannounced and unscheduled. Karoline didn't flinch. Jon had been critical of the Trump administration, particularly targeting what he described as scripted puppets working as his mouthpieces. It was no secret that Karoline had been in his crosshairs during his recent viral segments. But today he was here in person. "I guess we're going to have some fun," Karoline murmured to herself, flipping open her binder. The press conference began as usual. She addressed a few updates regarding foreign policy moves, rising employment numbers, and a new veterans healthcare initiative. Reporters from CNN, Fox, Reuters, and even some independent channels fired their usual battery of questions. Then Stewart stood up. No mic. No producer. Just him and a notepad. Karoline nodded toward him. "Looks like we've got a surprise guest." "Go ahead." Jon smiled. "Thank you, Karoline." "Jon Stewart, citizen, well, still troublemaker, I suppose. I just have a few clarifying questions." His tone was light, but every journalist in the room sensed the trap being laid. "My question is about this administration's recent comments on media integrity," he began. "You've repeatedly said the press is biased. Wouldn't you agree that attacking the press is a bit dictatorial?" Karoline blinked slowly, as if savoring the moment. "Interesting," she said. "Well, Mr. Stewart, considering your career was built on mocking the very press you now defend, I find it fascinating that you're suddenly a champion of journalistic ethics." A few reporters chuckled. Jon raised an eyebrow. "But let me answer seriously," Karoline continued. "President Trump isn't attacking the idea of journalism. He's defending the truth. And if some networks would rather push narratives than report facts, I'd argue they're the ones disrespecting real journalists." Stewart clapped slowly. "Touché. But Karoline, don't you think it's ironic for an administration that traffics in alternative facts to speak about truth?" She didn't blink. "Ironic? No. Expected? Yes." That phrase, alternative facts, was twisted by the media to begin with. What it meant was context, not contradiction. But nuance doesn't trend on Twitter, does it? The room grew quiet. Jon tried a different tactic. "Let's talk about empathy. You've defended budget cuts to social programs. Can you look into this camera," he said, pointing to the CNN camera live streaming the event, "and explain to a single mom in Detroit why cutting assistance helps her?" Karoline paused. "Yes, I can." And with that, she turned, looked straight into the camera, and said, "To the hardworking mother watching this right now, I want you to know that we see you. But government dependency shouldn't be the ceiling. It should be the floor we rise from. This administration believes in empowering you through jobs, tax relief, and real opportunity, not trapping you in cycles of survival." The entire room went silent. Even Stewart didn't speak. But he wasn't done. And neither was she. The room held its breath as Karoline's words lingered in the air. Jon Stewart's signature half-smile had faded into a thoughtful frown. But if people thought Jon would back off after that striking response, they didn't know Jon Stewart. He leaned forward slightly and tapped his pen on the notebook in front of him. "That was eloquent," he said. "But aren't you just sugarcoating policy choices that hurt real people? You talk about empowerment while supporting an administration that, let's be honest, often wages war on the working class." Karoline didn't hesitate. "It's not war, Jon. It's tough love. And it's about long-term prosperity, not short-term comfort. President Trump isn't promising handouts. He's fighting to fix a system that's failed people like that single mom for decades under previous leadership, including those supported by the very media you represent." There was a flicker of emotion in Jon's eyes. He had always been passionate about social issues. That's what made this exchange so powerful. Two people, both sharp in their convictions, colliding live on national television. Jon nodded. "So, in your mind, it's about tough love. Got it. Tell me then, Karoline, what's your definition of compassion in government?" Without missing a beat, Karoline replied, "Real compassion is helping Americans stand, not keeping them dependent." Compassion is school choice for kids trapped in failing districts. It's securing the border to protect families from cartel violence. It's bringing jobs back so communities can thrive. We believe in people, Jon, not programs. The room stirred. Reporters glanced at each other. Some scribbled furiously. Others typed even faster into their laptops. A few whispered, impressed by her composure and clarity. Jon narrowed his eyes. And how do you reconcile that belief with the president's often controversial rhetoric? You say you believe in people, but the language, let's face it, it's divisive. Karoline inhaled. This was the heart of the ambush. He wanted her to stumble, to either defend the indefensible or distance herself from the man she spoke for. But she had other plans. You know, she began slowly, I find it interesting that you, Jon Stewart, are asking about rhetoric. The same Jon Stewart who called half of Congress clowns, who made his career roasting everyone, from presidents to private citizens. When you used humor, it was called edgy. When Trump uses blunt words, it's called dangerous. Jon shifted in his seat. I'm not saying I agree with everything the president tweets, she continued. But let's not pretend this outrage isn't selective. Americans are tired of two sets of rules, one for the left and one for everyone else. A murmur of agreement swept through part of the room. Jon didn't respond right away. He looked at Karoline for a moment, not with hostility, but with something else. Respect, maybe. Then he chuckled softly. You've got bite. I'll give you that. Karoline cracked a small smile. You came here to rattle me. But I'm not here for a popularity contest, Jon. I'm here to speak for the people who voted for change. People the media laughs at, people you mock nightly from your Manhattan studio. But those people, they matter. And they're watching. Boom. Cameras clicked. Recorders beeped. Social media exploded. On Twitter, hashtags started trending. Hashtag Karoline claps back. Hashtag Stewart versus Leavitt. Hashtag White House showdown. Backstage, White House Chief of Staff Stephen Miller watched the stream and muttered, Damn, she just owned that room. But this showdown was far from over. Cable news anchors were already cutting into programming. MSNBC called it a press room brawl. Fox News labeled it a masterclass by Karoline Leavitt. CNN switched to a live split screen, analyzing body language, tone, and quotes in real time. Even late-night talk show hosts were already lining up monologues. Back inside the room, Jon Stewart adjusted his tie and chuckled. Well, that certainly made for good TV, he said with a grin. But let me ask you this, since we're being brutally honest here. Karoline gestured toward him. By all means. You say you speak for the people. But doesn't it bother you that much of what this administration stands for is inherently divisive? You're the mouthpiece for a man who seems to pick fights with everyone, from celebrities to our own institutions. Karoline leaned forward, both hands on the podium now. It doesn't bother me, Jon. What bothers me is when the political elite in this town spend decades talking down to working Americans, then get outraged when someone like President Trump speaks back in the same tone they've been using on us for years. She continued, her voice firm. Trump didn't divide America. He exposed the divisions that already existed and gave a voice to people who'd been ignored by both parties, mocked by the media, and dismissed as deplorable. That's not dangerous. That's democracy at work. Jon whistled. You really believe that? I live it, she said. I come from a blue-collar family in New Hampshire. My dad worked long nights to put food on the table. I didn't grow up in Georgetown or sip oat milk lattes in Brooklyn. I grew up watching my parents sacrifice, and I saw who was fighting for them and who wasn't. Jon fell quiet for a moment. It wasn't often someone turned the emotional spotlight back on him. The journalists in the room sat still, captivated by the clash. This wasn't the standard back and forth of spin and politics. This was raw and real. Then Jon pivoted, regaining his rhythm. Okay, fair enough. But let's talk foreign policy. There are critics, serious ones, who say this administration's isolationist tone has weakened America's standing globally. Your response? Karoline laughed softly. Oh, we're doing that now. That America first is bad routine. She straightened her posture. Let me ask you something, Jon. If a father puts his children first, is he a bad father? No. He's doing his job. That's what President Trump is doing. He's putting America first, not America only, but America first. And if our allies want to do business with us, they should start respecting us as equals, not freeloaders. Jon scribbled something, perhaps more out of habit than need. Karoline wasn't giving him any openings. Every jab he threw was being blocked or countered. She turned her attention to the entire press room now. For years, the people in this building she motioned around have measured success by how many overseas deals were signed, how many elites clinked C. For years, the people in this building she motioned around have measured success by how many overseas deals were signed, how many elites clinked champagne in Brussels. This president? He measures success by jobs created in Ohio, by fentanyl stopped at the southern border, by small businesses reopening in Chicago. Applause. Actual, spontaneous clapping from the back of the room. A rare thing in press briefings. Jon smiled. Not sarcastically this time, but almost as if he was enjoying the challenge more than he expected. You know what? He said finally. You're better than I thought. Karoline raised an eyebrow. You came here expecting a scripted press puppet. What you got was a patriot with a backbone. The entire room knew they were witnessing a moment that would replay in political history for years to come. As the press room buzzed with nervous energy, Karoline calmly sipped her water. Across from her, Jon Stewart wore a bemused expression, not one of defeat, but of surprise. He had come expecting another polished spin doctor. Instead, he found a fighter. Sharp, grounded, unapologetically patriotic. So, Jon said with a wry smirk, you're not afraid to ruffle feathers, I'll give you that. But let's go a little deeper. Trump's critics, many of them, accuse this White House of abandoning empathy. They point to your handling of migrants, student loan borrowers, even climate change. They say this administration lacks a heart. Karoline let the silence sit for a second before answering. Empathy isn't measured in hashtags, Jon. The room fell quiet again. It's not about crying on cue for cable news. It's about creating real results. You think it's more empathetic to promise debt forgiveness we can't pay for? Or is it more responsible to create an economy where graduates can earn enough to pay off their loans and own a future? Real empathy empowers. It doesn't enable. She scanned the room, locking eyes with a few journalists who'd often criticized her. Look, I don't come to this podium to be liked. I come here to represent a president who, flaws and all, fights for Americans who feel forgotten. Maybe that's not poetic enough for late-night shows, but it's plenty real to the folks I talk to every day. Jon leaned back in his chair. You realize you sound like a character in a political drama, right? Like Aaron Sorkin could write this stuff. Karoline smiled. Well, maybe Aaron Sorkin should start writing with us instead of about us. That earned some laughter from the press, even a chuckle from Jon himself. But seriously, Jon continued, you're young, smart, and clearly capable. Doesn't any part of you wonder if you're defending the wrong cause? That maybe history won't look back kindly on all of this. Karoline's expression turned serious. You know what history remembers? She asked. Courage. Not consensus. History remembers people who stood up when it wasn't easy. Lincoln wasn't loved in his time. Reagan was mocked. Even Trump, he's reshaping this party, this country, whether people like it or not. And I'm proud to be part of that shift. Jon crossed his arms. So no regrets? She didn't blink. None. And then it happened. A junior White House aide, trying to be helpful, adjusted the mic at the podium. But in doing so, accidentally activated the live feed on Karoline's open tablet. Her screen mirrored to the side monitors and displayed live Twitter reactions from the American public. And what they showed stunned everyone. Hashtag Team Karoline was trending #1 in the US. Tweets poured in. This girl's a beast. Just roasted Stewart on live TV. Karoline Leavitt, America's Iron Lady in pearls. Did she just body a whole liberal legend? Respect. One tweet stood out, retweeted over 100,000 times already. I didn't vote for Trump. I might now. Because of her. Even Jon glanced at the screen, eyes widening slightly. Well, he muttered into the mic, guess I picked the wrong week to poke the bear. Karoline turned to the audience, her voice calm but full of purpose. Let this be a reminder, she said. The American people are smarter than the media gives them credit for. They know real leadership when they see it. The room broke into applause, reporters, aides, even longtime skeptics. Jon nodded respectfully. Karoline, you've officially made history. You didn't just survive this. You owned it. She smiled. I'm not here to survive. I'm here to lead. As Jon walked out of the press room, he whispered to his producer, that girl's going places, and fast. Within hours, Karoline Leavitt's name was everywhere. The clip of her clash with Jon Stewart dominated social media. News networks aired it on a loop. Pundits from both the left and right scrambled to weigh in. Some criticized her confidence as arrogance. Others hailed it as the emergence of a new political star. But everyone agreed on one thing: Karoline Leavitt was no ordinary press secretary. Inside the White House, the mood was electric. Staffers huddled around TVs. Even Secret Service agents offered passing nods of approval. And in the Oval Office, President Trump leaned back in his chair, a rare grin playing on his lips. "She's got the fire," he said to his chief of staff. "Reminds me of me." The chief of staff chuckled. "She didn't just defend the administration, sir. She lit the media up like a bonfire." Meanwhile, Karoline sat alone in her West Wing office, finally catching a moment to breathe. Her tablet buzzed every few seconds, calls from campaign teams, donors, political consultants. She picked up one call. It was her mother. "Sweetheart," her mom said with a mix of awe and emotion, "I've never been more proud of you. Dad's watching from up there, and I know he's smiling." Karoline's voice cracked just a little. "Thanks, Mom. I wanted to show them we're not afraid." "You didn't show them," her mom said firmly. "You proved it." Elsewhere, Jon Stewart sat backstage at a DC theater prepping for a stand-up benefit event. His team was buzzing too, some embarrassed, others impressed. His producer leaned in. "You okay, Jon?" Jon nodded slowly. "Yeah. You win some, you lose some. She got me. Fair and square." He tapped his fingers on his notebook thoughtfully. "You know what's wild? I came in thinking she'd be a shallow talking head. Turns out she's got steel in her bones." That night, Jon even opened his routine by referencing the incident. "If you're wondering why I'm limping emotionally, I got my behind handed to me today by a 29-year-old press secretary with the voice of a librarian and the punch of a heavyweight." The audience laughed. Jon smiled. "Karoline Leavitt, if you're watching, respect. But next time, let's do it on my turf. Maybe we debate with comedy or a dance-off." Within 48 hours, conservative influencers began rallying around Karoline. Fundraising emails went out with subject lines like "Stand with Karoline" and "She's the fighter America needs." Even swing voters took notice. Political strategists began whispering something that felt premature but thrilling. Senator Leavitt? Governor Leavitt? Maybe even President someday? Meanwhile, liberal commentators scrambled to figure out how the media had underestimated her so drastically. One editorial even admitted, "In trying to bait her into a misstep, we gave her a national stage." And she didn't blink. By the end of the week, Karoline was invited onto 60 Minutes, The View, and Joe Rogan's podcast. She declined most of them, but she accepted one. A second interview with Jon Stewart. This time, the format was different. Casual setting. 2 chairs. Coffee. No podium. No mics in their faces. "You came back," Jon said. Karoline smiled. "Told you I'm not afraid." He raised an eyebrow. "You planning on running for something?" She paused, then answered with a grin that sent ripples across the internet. "Let's just say I'm not done speaking. And America's not done listening." Epilogue: The legacy of the mic drop. The phrase Karoline clapback entered pop culture lexicon. Young conservatives saw in her a new role model. Even some moderates confessed to being Karoline curious. She inspired a generation of women who admired strength without apology, poise without pretense. And Jon? He went on with his career, a bit humbled but wiser. He even tweeted, "She beat me fair. But next time, I'm bringing notes and coffee." A Karoline Leavitt rematch? To which Karoline replied, "Game on, Jon. Just don't forget the cream."